All right, we are going to go ahead and get started. We're just after 7. We want to try to respect people's time and kind of go through this. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Dennis McDavid. I'm the superintendent of the Berkley School District. I'm in my 3rd year of being superintendent and my 10th year as an employee in the district. Tonight, what we're going to do is we're going to review the process to date. So we're going to review a little bit about how we got here. Then we're going to review the scope of the proposal, and I'll ask Mr. Calhoun from Stantec to come on and do that and talk about what we are talking about, what improvements we're actually talking about. And then we've got a list of the most common questions and answers that we've received to date, and I'll walk through those and probably hit most of the questions that you may have, and hopefully they'll be answered as we go throughout or at that time. If you have individual questions, a couple of things. When you came in, you hopefully got a card and a pen, so you can write questions on that, and there'll be a collection basket at the end, or you can hand those to me or someone else. If you, at the end, if you want to stay and you have individual questions, we will have people posted at different points, and we'll have our finance Deputy Superintendent of Finance, Larry Gallagher, at one place. We'll have some of the construction management folks at one place, and Mary Beth Fitzpatrick at another place. So we'll go over that. So hopefully you'll get all your questions answered. So first and foremost, thank you for being here. This work in the proposal is very important to our schools and to our community. And the schools in the community are intertwined. I don't believe that we exist without one another. And great schools support great communities, and great communities support great schools, and we are really hand in glove, and that's important to recognize. So let me begin with some background as to how we got here. Back in February and March of 2013, so almost 2 full years ago, we had a strategic planning committee, and some of you I see in the crowd were on that committee. And that committee reviewed our Vision 2020, our strategic plan. There were 65 parents, staff, community members, and students, and we spent 3 days reviewing our 8 key areas. When we looked at our facilities, which is one of our 8 key areas, these pulled a couple of quotes from there. We needed to conduct a comprehensive facility and technology needs assessment. Another area was we needed to engage and inform the community with regard to the deficiencies and gaps and opportunities in those buildings. And so so 2 years ago we started this, and I was reminded the other night that no, it hasn't been 2 years ago, that there was a proposal back in 2010, and after that one did not succeed, there was a community meeting, and people came and talked about what worked and what didn't work and what they were upset with and what they were happy with, and so it really started back then. So we needed to do an independent assessment, so we bid that process out. We required a neutral third party, someone who was highly experienced, with expertise to engage in expertise in engineering, mechanical technology, and schools. We created an interview committee, and that committee recommended IDS, Integrated Design Solutions, out of Troy. IDS was approved at the October 14th board meeting, and then they started their work. So IDS literally walked every inch of our buildings. And again, it's important to recognize they're a neutral third party. They had no stake in how big or how small what they said our deficiencies were. So they had 6 technology assessment meetings, 9 educational assessment meetings. They spent over 120 hours in the field. They reviewed our historic documents. They had multiple working sessions, 7 leadership team meetings, 3 public presentations to the board. And in short, they conducted a very thorough and comprehensive review of the assessment, review of our facilities and technology. On April 28th, here in this room, we and IDS presented the results of that study. A 512-page report has been posted on the website since April 29th of 2014. It's still there today, and you can go look at it and see what it says. But essentially, the report's a call to action to address the facilities in the district. The report says we better do something so that we can keep these buildings functional and in good use for our students. So, to address those findings, we needed the expertise of a firm who's worked in the education space and has in-house experts. So we created an RFP, a request for a proposal. We posted that publicly and sent that out across the state to firms to all the known firms who work in that area. We created an interview team of parents, board members, central office employees, a teacher, building administrators, and I was on that committee as well. And the committee believed that SHW, and the company now called Stantec, and their office is right over on Coolidge Highway, almost throw a rock and hit them from here, was best positioned for the job. So among the reasons, not just that they were close, and that was a minor reason, but prior work, they've done national work in the K-12 space and university space, and really all kinds of private industry as well. So the approach of all expertise under one roof. So they've got engineering expertise, they've got architecture expertise, they've got a great deal of the expertise that we need all under one roof, and that's compelling. The commitment to the community and pressure to deliver, and I joke about this a little bit, but if they don't do their job, we can walk over there and hold signs and tell them they didn't do their job. And so there's a pressure there that they have to deliver. They also have shown great creativity in working with old spaces and new spaces. And we've got old spaces, and they've been able to do really some amazing work. And so SHW Stantec was recommended and then approved at the July 14th board meeting. On September 17th of last year, a group of about 70 parents, teachers, students, staff, and community members convened to begin a discussion about how do we best address these needs. Stantec facilitated those meetings, and attendance at the meetings was robust even when the Tigers were in the playoff. This is interesting, and it talks about the commitment of our community to one another and to the schools. Most people tell me that when you convene one of these committees, if you start with 70 people, at the second meeting you've got about 50, and the third meeting you've got about 40, and by the end you've got about 20 people. Our committee we averaged about 70 people every night. And so that's a testament to people were in it and took their roles very seriously. So as we went through that process, that group met at every one of our K-12 buildings. They toured most of the buildings. There were a couple buildings. This building they didn't want to tour. They've seen enough of it. But there were a couple buildings they didn't tour, but most of the buildings we toured. And the goal was to create a district-wide plan that made each learning environment better. So this wasn't about a single building or a couple buildings. This was for the whole district. We've got to create a plan that improves the whole district. So we evaluated the needs of each building, both the current state and the desired state, and we looked at several iterations of plans. So we didn't just come up with one plan and say, this is it. We went through several iterations. We had discussions. We had small group discussions, large group discussions, and our last meeting was on October 29th. The part of what we needed architecture and engineering. We also need a construction management firm. And these are the guys who look at what the architects say they want and tell them whether they can do it or not. They're the guys who stage the construction, who do the actual construction work. So we created a similar committee and followed the same process as we did with the architecture firm. And we interviewed 5 companies. And McCarthy and Smith was approved at the October 13th board meeting, and they've been doing great work since. They also have a great reputation, great experience, and great people. And they're very hands-on, involved, and committed, and they've shown that. They said they'd do that when we interviewed them, and they've shown that, and they've been doing a lot of great work. So the ongoing work is McCarthy and Smith and Stantec and the district have been refining the scope of the work. So when the committee met and we left our last meeting, we had all these things we said we wanted to do. Well, part of what McCarthy and Smith and Stantec did is they went through every line by line. They looked at the IDS report. They looked at the assumptions the IDS report had. They changed some of those assumptions. They rethought some things and have gone through several iterations of that to make sure all our angles were considered. And the scope of work was presented to the board on December 8th of 2014. On December 15th, we had a meeting with the State Treasury Department. You may not know this, but the State Treasury Department has to approve it, and they've got to say, yep, this is a realistic plan. This makes sense. And so we went to them, and they approved it. The board approved the PQA, or the scope of work, on January 5th. The ballot language was adopted on February 9th, and we've had several interviews with the media, both before and since then. The bond proposal information is on our website, and several meetings will follow at each school. So there are several important considerations about this, and hopefully what you've gotten from this, and trying to be brief here, but also trying to paint the picture that this was not a shoot from the hip exercise. This was a very thorough and well thought out program. So we've worked very hard to go slow, to go fast. We have not rushed this thing. We've said, here are the things we need to do, and we've done those. We won't get everything that all of us want in this proposal, but we can't make perfect the enemy of better. So any proposal that's as big as this one, or frankly, any proposal that's as small as you can make a proposal, there are going to be things to quibble with and argue with. Why are you doing this and not that? None of us are going to say, yep, this is the perfect proposal, because that document doesn't exist. It just doesn't. But we can't say, I'm going to wait until it's perfect, because if you do, we're not going anywhere, and we'll never go anywhere. So the proposal ought to help bring our community together. Each of us has a role to play in that. And what I mean by that is, I think these schools, our schools, are critical to this community. I think they have been since they've been established. And this proposal, we've got some real needs, and we're going to talk about those. It should not tear us apart. This should not be about calling each other names or getting angry or upset. This is a pretty reasonable and well-reasoned proposal. And as I said, there are going to be things you can quibble with. We can all quibble with any part of it, but it ought to help bring us together. All right. With that, I'm going to ask Mr. Calhoun to come up and kind of walk us through the proposal.
Thank you very much. Okay, the first thing I'm going to talk about is during these community meetings with these 70 community members, we went through 7 meetings. I'm just going to kind of quickly walk through the step in the process. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Patrick Calhoun, architect at Stantec. I'm not used to having such a big screen to talk to. I'm a little nervous tonight. So anyway, first meeting, we went through introductions of the entire committee, so we all really understood where each other came from on this. We reviewed the facility condition issues that were provided by IDS, and then we went through some educational environmental trends, just understanding 21st century learning environments. During the second meeting, we worked to come to a consensus on what the guiding principles were to really help underpin this entire conversation, really saying if we are to be successful, we need to be able to support all of these guiding principles as much as possible. We also then developed scope categories, understanding the different aspects of the different projects that needed to happen across the district. And again, as Dennis said, we looked at district-wide priorities. We didn't want this to be about any one building. We needed to really resolve a lot of things and start to understand how to prioritize what was most important. We also looked at technology needs district-wide. We presented and walked through building level priorities. So after we looked at the district issues, we then started diving into the buildings, even forcing people who were parents with kids at those buildings to sit on other groups to make sure we were trying to keep the conversation as unbiased as possible. At the fifth meeting, we reviewed the priorities, walked through the financing issues in putting together something of this scope. At the sixth meeting, got consensus behind the bond recommendations and behind the master plan options, walked through 4 or 5 different options and worked to really craft a new one from all of those. When you look at you go A through D and you always end up selecting E. So I really worked with what the most important priorities were to bring forward, and at the last meeting brought that forward with master plan recommendations for the administration to take to the board. So some of the top priorities during our conversations, some of these guiding principles: the need to ensure a solid foundation for the school district, improve learning environments, and that goes from technology all the way to indoor air quality and student comfort. Improve indoor air quality, got ahead of myself there. Improve student comfort, upgrade instructional technology, and that's both at the classroom side, but also the infrastructure needed to support that and keep it flexible for the long run. And prepare for the future, and the goal here was that anything that's done during this project, during this bond, needs to be something that when future generations go to work on these schools, we needed to be thoughtful about not putting roadblocks in the way. So to really plan, look at the entire set of issues, and then the last step was to take that and prioritize what we could do for the 3 mills for the $58.9 million bond. Understanding we can't do everything. So these were really the things that were most important that were kept in the project. Some of the existing conditions that we toured, that we looked at, I'm going to start with the building systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, the things that really you don't see when you walk by the building. In a lot of cases, you don't even see when you're in the building. Boilers that are original from the 1950s. They've been well maintained, but they are obsolete. A lot of cases, they're at the end of their they're actually past the end of their expected lifespan. Even some of the newer boilers. It is a steam system, which is something that's very uncommon in current construction, current architecture. Not as efficient. It's got issues that a hot water system will resolve. So we are looking district-wide, except for I think one building. It's a steam system. These are temperature controls to handle the heating and ventilation throughout the school. Some of the older equipment. Some of the classroom units, again, these are original to a lot of the buildings. They've been maintained as best they can, but they are past the end of their expected life. And as you can tell, parts just cannot be obtained for a lot of these things anymore. Some of the issues in the restrooms, again, original fixtures. In addition to the plumbing being an issue, both supply and waste side, when you get into restrooms like this, they are not ADA compliant. There's no way to get up onto that little step up there if you're in a wheelchair. Some of the older hand wash sinks, again, a lot of the fixtures are due for replacement. Some of the things that you don't see until you go into the basements or the pipe tunnels, just the age of some of the older pipe work. Electrical, this is obviously not something you would see in a modern building. And a lot of, even some of the breaker panels, the parts have to be purchased on eBay because the manufacturers don't make them anymore, so you're buying other people's used parts. Original lighting. Moving to the building exteriors, just again, issues where the buildings have shifted or moved. So you've got sealant issues. At the high school, from Catalpa it looks good, but if you get close to this, that original limestone is in pretty rough shape. You get even closer and you see the underside of the canopy. It's due for work. You come to the back of the building, there's been some shifting of the wall. This is the greenhouse, and invariably on older buildings like this, because of the construction of greenhouses, again, that's something that's one of the first things to really need to be addressed. There's been some just deterioration over the years of some of the steel that's supporting canopies at the buildings that date to the 1950s. I believe this has since been repaired, but this is indicative of some of the issues when you get water buildup, ice buildup, and then some of the damage that causes. And then you can see what it's done, collateral damage essentially. That part of the roof has a problem. It creates issues with the brick, which creates issues with the mortar, which then allows, in some cases, allows water inside the building. This one is actually an interesting kind of collection to talk about technology. This is, in a lot of the rooms, state-of-the-art. Tube television, electrical that's been modified over the years. Coming down on the right-hand side there, you can see some of the technology infrastructure bringing data and power. It is of an older type. It is not, it cannot handle the bandwidth that modern video and modern educational technology delivery requires. It just can't handle the speeds, and that essentially goes all the way back to the central servers at the district office. Looking at the building interiors, areas where the floors, some of the original floors or some of the floors that were redone in the 60s or 70s need to be addressed. In a lot of the older classrooms, some of the challenges are you're dealing with original chalkboards that have had whiteboards placed over them. original woodwork that really is in the way of trying to expand. Even for those that have projectors, the screen size is small because the available area to project on, given the age of these buildings, is small. Even with lighting upgrades, but as you can see, there's ventilation issues. Fans have been added. Those are original ceiling tiles, so work that will have to be done on the ceiling, those will need to be replaced. Some areas where casework needs to be repaired or replaced just because of age and use. Other issues that we looked at were building access. For those of you who've gone into Anderson, who've had students at Anderson, the main visitor entry is essentially at the back of the building. It's very hard to do drop-off on Catalpa just because of the number of cars. So currently people are entering at the back, and it is 150 or more, a couple hundred feet before you get up to the area where the front office is. So this has been really looked at as a security issue. A lot of the buildings, the older buildings, when you come in, even by the front office, if you're quick, if you get scanned in and you're quick, you can bypass that and go right upstairs without having to actually sign in. And really where it all comes together is in the classrooms. So it's looking at, again, the mechanical system. You've got the older sound amplification system, old technology in the television, whiteboards that are undersized and in a lot of cases worn out already, desks that are all different styles and different sizes, and frankly a lot of stuff without a lot of space to put it. So there's a limited amount of storage space for a lot of the modern teaching tools. So as part of those meetings, we had a conversation about what those district-wide needs were. When you see the symbols up here, we're talking preschool, elementary school, Anderson, Norup, and the high school. So in all these cases right now, these are things that we're really talking at some level across the district. Providing Wi-Fi in all the schools, interactive classroom projectors that allow the students to actually come up and interact with the technology, classroom audio support. Again, the rooms that have it, the system's very old. And then AV system replacement, audio-visual system replacement actually in this space because it's been problematic for a while. Supporting technology, and this is again all the stuff from the classroom back to the district offices. Servers, firewalls, switches that handle the traffic in the individual buildings, fiber cables between the buildings, cabling inside the building, video control and distribution, and this allows for providing video feeds to the classrooms as VHS and other things like that are becoming a little harder to work with. So this allows a central control of that and distribution. And then disaster recovery, and that's power and backup in case something goes wrong. There's backup for that. Updating the clock and the public address system, providing a cellular signal booster inside the buildings. And for those of you who've been in the building, try to use your phone. It's an annoyance when it doesn't work because these are such thick buildings. But in reality, this is primarily for emergency responders because a lot of them do use cellular technology to communicate with each other, and without those boosters, their systems don't work once they're inside the building. And again, updating the antiquated telephone system. Parts, if I recall correctly, parts are no longer available for that system. The site work that's being proposed is to provide regrading to correct those areas that have drainage issues where water collects up against the building or runs into the building. Not all schools have that, but the ones that do, that's the work that's being proposed. And then any additions that are provided, and I'll show you some of those in a second, whatever site work is required to make those work. Asset protection, and this is really the deferred maintenance and just outdated end-of-life issues. Every building has different needs, so one elementary school will not get the same thing as another, but the goal is to get them to the same place. Exterior envelope, this would be replacing exterior doors as needed, roof repair and replacement as needed, wall repairs, soffits and fascias, essentially all the roof conditions that are original, downspouts where there are windows and sills that need repairing, and then areaways, steps, exterior handrails, concrete work on the outside to make the approach safe and ADA compliant. Once we're inside the building, again, the same issue. Every building is a little different. Interior doors, most are original. Toilet rooms, as you saw, that was one example. If you get an opportunity as part of the tours of the individual buildings, that's one of the places we'll go, and it's almost like going back to school when we were all in school. Carpeting and flooring where needed, where other work is being done as well, where there's ceiling and wall damage, water damage, and casework. Bleachers, primarily in the East Gym here in this building, and then whatever other work is needed to replace those older pieces of equipment. For safety and code, providing updated building access systems and security cameras throughout the district, providing ADA accessibility improvements to make sure that they're as handicap accessible as possible, given the age of the buildings. Improve handrails and guardrails for safety. Many of them are original. Stairways and egress pathways, updating the emergency lighting, and then upgrading the fire alarm system so it's got a more centrally controlled, technology. As far as building systems go, and this is something we heard over and over and over again, the parents with kids in the schools, was the air quality in a lot of these buildings. The temperature in a lot of these buildings is really difficult to control. My son layers up every day, and by the time he comes home, he's already had half of it off and half of it back on. Improve the air quality, comfort, and energy efficiency, and that's transitioning from a steam system to a hot water system. Much better controllability, much better efficiency. That's going to require it's new boilers, new piping, new ventilation, new ductwork. The units in the classrooms would change. And then really thinking about making sure that, again, for the future, not doing air conditioning now, but making sure that it's not something that the system gets in the way if in the future people decide that air conditioning is important. Improving the electrical system, updating those outdated panels, switching, updating the lighting, again, for energy efficiency, but also to reduce glare in the classrooms. Providing that backup power for data systems. Improving plumbing, and this is the supply plumbing, the waste piping, the valves, the fixtures, a lot of which shutoffs that don't work anymore because they're original. While in there doing that work, also looking at programmatic improvements, and this really is the 21st century education. Improving the entries and access control from the main offices. Looked at it on a building-by-building basis, which ones need it, which ones already have it, to make sure that access is controlled at the main office for visitors. Upsizing academic, special education, and student support functions, essentially across the district where classrooms are undersized for the number of students in them. If there's an opportunity through reworking the building to move them to a larger space, one of the benefits is there's also special education that in a lot of cases are in undersized spaces that can then move to that larger space. So it's making sure there's always kind of a trickle-up effect that when one changes, the others can move in and make better use of the space. Improve spaces for specials, and this essentially is art and music. At the elementaries, a lot of them are in undersized rooms that weren't designed for what they're being used for. Improve opportunity for collaboration and exploration. A lot of learning happens outside the classroom, and in a lot of these buildings, there's not a spot outside the classroom for that to happen. So when possible, to look for ways to make that a doable thing. Update select furniture, finishes, and equipment. And then, as I said before, ensure future resilience, to make these as future-proof as possible so you aren't stuck in 20 years going, well, now the room doesn't work anymore. Looking at the individual buildings, starting with the preschools, at Tyndall and Avery, all of the work we've just described, this is just the work focused on specifically these buildings. Replace the original air conditioning system at Tyndall. It again is past the end of its expected life. Update the system at Avery, and then replace and upgrade the classroom and corridor finishes. Moving to the elementary schools, at Angel, the oldest continuously operating elementary school in Oakland County. Improve the entry lobby to make it more secure for visitors because the office is set back from it. Reassign and relocate some classrooms to accommodate that change. construct a new room for specials, which then allows art and music to relocate from their current spaces to larger spaces, and then allows classrooms that are in undersized rooms to locate into those spaces. And then, as part of that work, again, replacing the classroom and corridor finishes. At Burton, one of the buildings where you can come in and, if you're quick, you can bypass the office, enlarge the office and entry area out this direction to accommodate a secure entry lobby. One of the side effects of that is it will allow enlarging the specials room as part of that work. Relocate specials, that's art and music, to the larger spaces, which then allows some undersized classrooms to be upsized into larger spaces, special ed, and the support functions that the students use to get into spaces that actually work better for that. And again, replacing the finishes. At Pattengill, a new secure entry lobby and adjacent office, and I'll show you why in a second here. Renovate the former office space into a larger space for, I believe it was music. Upsize the resource rooms where the therapist and the speech therapist and other student resources for special education are in very undersized spaces, and then replace the finishes. So at Pattengill, currently entering off of Oakshire, the arrow is where people come in. That yellow dot at the opposite end of the building is the main office. So again, you can't see that entry from the main office other than through the camera. The goal will be to move that main office into a small addition at this end to make it a secure entry where the people are actually coming into the building, where people are parking, and then repurpose the old office into other functions. At Rogers, improve control and visibility in the visitor entry. It's already pretty good from the previous renovation, just make it work a little better. Construct new special rooms to allow that upsizing to happen, which will allow classrooms, special education, resource rooms, and staff space to move into spaces that are adequate. Renovate the building to provide a large group instruction multi-purpose space. The goal here is throughout this work, it'll free up a little space in the heart of the building to provide that collaborative space to be able to bring an entire class or even two classes together for a special instruction area outside the classroom. And then again, replacing finishes as needed. At Anderson, looked at a lot of different ways of solving that entry issue, and I wish I could remember who it was in the committee who came up with the idea, and it made so much sense that we were shocked that we hadn't thought of it sooner. But we think it's a really good approach. Rework the entry, provide a small addition to improve access control from the main office, do the site work that's necessary to make that happen, and then renovate the choir, the band, and the orchestra rooms to improve acoustics and usability. Because I believe right now orchestra is in the old wood shop, which if you were to move the chairs out, really still looks like an old wood shop, so it's got acoustics issues. Doing what we can to make that work better. So again, that's Anderson looking to the south. There's the entry, there's the office. And the proposal is through site work and relocating the entry to the door that's right there in the elbow of the building, you're immediately across from the office. So you can maintain control until somebody walks right into the building. At Norup, a cafeteria multi-purpose orchestra addition, which again will allow freeing up other space for better uses in the building. One of which is the original kitchen, which with the central kitchen is really underutilized. To renovate that and provide a large volume space for choir. They're currently in a small size classroom with a low ceiling height, over 50 students in the choir. It's actually extremely loud when kids are singing in that space. It makes it very hard to work as a choir. Increase space for resource room and learning specialists. It's in a single suite. It's in actually a suite that was a couple classrooms, subdivided in some rather odd ways, very cramped. And then convert undersized computer labs, there are two, to combine them into one larger space that will work better for the way that they're using the computers now. And that, again, preliminary, this is not a design, this is just a concept to see how it would fit on the site. In addition, off the front, it takes advantage of existing toilet rooms, it takes advantage of the existing lobby space, so you don't have to build more of that. rework the entry drop-off to allow more queuing of cars to reduce some of the problems at the intersection, and make this school something that's actually much more usable for the community by providing that space front and center. And lastly, at the high school, again, all that base work, repairing this entry, providing a new entry off of that, and a canopy to control security access from the main office, but also for students to be able to wait for rides for being picked up. Renovate on the second level the computer labs and the media center to move them from really a 20th century model, most of which is storing books, into a 21st century model where the students have collaborative space where they can work together on group projects, on team projects, and really make it something that's much more usable throughout the day. The design center and the art wing, kind of around the backside of the building, renovate that area to improve flexibility of the space. Most of that was fit in the original functional spaces from shop and the wood shop. Provide design, art, and vocal music space, and this is really the hallmark of a STEAM education. A lot of you have probably heard of STEM education. STEAM takes it and adds science, technology, engineering, art, and math. So this really becoming that hub of opportunity there. And then on this one building, providing air conditioning throughout the building to provide a spot for summer programs. So instead of distributing them across the district, really looking at the opportunity to collect them together to be efficient with the use of energy in the summer. And there we go. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. All right, so that's broad brush scope of the plan, and there is every building will be touched, and improvements will be made in every building, and it will improve environments for our students. So what I'm going to go through is some question and answers, and as we've talked about this proposal and met with different people in different groups, we get many of the same questions. So I want to try to address those as best I can. So first question is, have the buildings been maintained? And this is a concern about whether we've done all we could as a district to maintain our buildings so a bond wouldn't be necessary. So people are curious, why do we have all the needs identified in the IDS report? The IDS report identified $120 million in need. Why do we have all those needs? Have we not been maintaining our buildings? I think that's a good question. So first, some background. The experts, architects, will tell you that the standard is we need to invest between 2 and 5% of the building's value on maintenance and upkeep every year. So each and every year we should be spending 2 to 5% of the building's value. So conservatively, our district has $250 million, $250 million in the value of our buildings. So what that means, at 2%, so if we take the conservative number, the low end of the 2 to 5%, we should be spending $5 million a year on maintaining our buildings and upkeeping them, all right? Sinking fund, that's the money we get to spend on maintenance and upkeep, generates $680,000 a year. All right, so there is a deficit of $4.3 million. So the question is, where do you get that money? So additionally, when you think about the age of our buildings, they're older, and with age comes more maintenance issues. It's kind of intuitive. So your costs increase. Angel, as Patrick said, is the oldest continuously operating elementary school in Oakland County. The good news is it's got that cool cupola on top, so that's good. But the bottom line here is our custodial maintenance teams do a great job maintaining our buildings. I think they do a fantastic job. The problem is we don't have the money. And so the model in Michigan's different than other states. Other states do it different ways. But the model in Michigan is that every now and then you've got to go to the community and get a cash infusion to essentially catch up. So that's what we're trying to do now. So what will this cost me? So the ballot proposal is $58.9 million. That equates to 3 mills, approximately 3 mills for the taxable value of your home. Not the total value of your home, the taxable value. So a home worth $200,000 typically has a $100,000 taxable value. So 3 mills would be about $300 per year in that example that the taxpayer would pay. But each homeowner is going to be different. For example, senior citizens are going to pay less. Typically, And again, it's an example. So we've got a tax calculator on our site that our bond group has put up there. And you can go on there and plug in a couple of variables, a couple of small things that are specific to you, and get a pretty good idea of what it will cost you individually. So is the estimated millage 3 or 4.5, 4.15? This is a question. If you look at the ballot language, it says two things in there. It says the estimated millage is 3, and then it says the estimated millage is 4.15. So by law, so that when part of that Treasury meeting with the Treasury is they tell us, here's how you have to figure it. So by law, we have to assume taxable value in our community, that growth based on our most recent 5 years, okay? So we're mandated to show a negative 2.39% growth in the values of your homes in the next 5 years. So every year, for the first 5 years of this thing, we've got to show negative 2.39, negative 2.39, negative. And so over 5 years, there's a decline of 12% in home values based on what's happened in the past. Now, if you think about what's happened in the past 5 years, we went through one of the worst economic depressions in the lifetimes of most of us in this room. I'll be kind and say all of us in this room. So last year in our district, home values grew at 2.2%. All right? So they didn't grow at a negative 2.39, they grew at 2.2. That's quite a difference. And Oakland County's projection is that we'll have 4.4% growth over the next 4 years. So that is, the point is, that's a very, very conservative number when you've got to take negative 2.39 for the next 5 years. So what will this really cost me? So there's a discussion about, well, you're going to bond $58.9 million, but what is it really going to cost? Well, it's just like buying a home. If you buy a home for $200,000 at a 4.5% fixed interest rate for 30 years, your total cost is about $365,000. That's the way interest works. So if we bond $58.9 million for 25 years, we've got to pay interest on those bonds just like a homeowner does. So typical bond rates are going to be less than typical home mortgage rates, though. So assuming similar rates to what the bond market is yielding today, over the 25 years, the total cost is going to be about $100 million, all right? That really shouldn't surprise anyone, but that's the way mortgages work in America. I mean, that's the way interest works. That's why people buy the bonds, because they're getting a return on it. So it's really pretty simple. Again, shouldn't be surprising at all. All right, so, but again, and that's the 3 mills ought to cover all that. So this is a question I get a lot. Why not the whole $120 million? If IDS report identified $120 million in need, fix it all, is what they say. You ought to fix it all. Just fix it all. Well, we can't do that. We don't believe we can do that, because when we looked at the IDS report with our community input, we said not everything is a high need. There's some really nice things to have on there, but not everything is a high need. And we needed to balance the ideal versus the practical. So ideally, you'd fix everything. That'd be great. We'd have air conditioning in every one of our buildings. We would have perfect systems, new boilers. Everything would be fantastic. That's the perfect. We can't do that. So we needed to be practical. And what we realized, what the committee realized, what we've all realized is our community has shown strong support for reasonable and thoughtful investments in our schools. And this plan is exactly that. I think if we tried to do $120 million, so the millage would essentially double, a little more than double if we did that. I don't think the community would say that's what we want. So that's why. It's one we get a lot. Why do we allow schools of choice kids or SOC kids in our district? So more than 15 years ago, the school board approved schools of choice students. So the school board made a decision and said, we're going to allow students who don't live in our district to attend our schools. It's important to note that only students who live in Oakland County can attend the schools, all right? So someone told me, well, you get all these kids from Detroit. No, we don't, because that's Wayne County, because we got to live in Oakland County. So why do we do that? We'll give you 4 reasons, and I'm going to take each one of these a little individually in a little more depth. First of all, our community has said that schools in the neighborhood, having schools in our neighborhoods is important to us. They've said that again and again and again. SOC kids help spread the fixed cost over more students. So if you're going to have schools in the neighborhood, it's to help spread the fixed cost. Our deep and rigorous programming is important to us, and SOC kids generate over $7 million per year for our programming. So let me talk about each one of those. Community has said that schools in the neighborhood are important. So it would be more efficient to have grade level buildings, but less family and community friendly. What I mean by grade level buildings, a lot of districts have done this. They're going to have, one building is a K1 building, kindergarten and first grade. Another building is second, third grade. Another building is fourth and fifth grade. The reason they do that is it's much more efficient. It's easier for me to operate because I can put all the kindergarten and first grade teachers together. I can spread those kids easier. So it's much more efficient. It is less community friendly. And think about this, if you've got a kindergartner, they're changing buildings 3 times in their 5 years, 6 years. Not many parents want that. So if you eliminate SOC, if you say, you know what, we shouldn't allow a kid who doesn't live in our district, come here, we want it, stop it, let's just stop it. Okay, but then you're going to close at least one elementary. And you'll possibly move to grade level buildings. And that's the consideration that you're going to have to make. So if you have to close an elementary, first question you get, or first thing that everyone in their neighborhood says is not mine, close that other guy's. You need my building because it's the only one that has X, Y, or Z, you name it. But no one wants their own building to close. Haven't met anyone who says, yep, I'll volunteer, close our building. All right? So having schools in the neighborhood also helps support home values. And that's been shown again and again. So help spreads fixed cost over more students. So we allow SOC kids in because if we assume we're going to have neighborhood schools, then we've got to run them efficiently. And to do that, we need optimal enrollment. So optimal enrollment helps spread the fixed building cost and personnel cost over more students. So instead of, only the kids in the neighborhood paying for that principal, now you have kids coming from the outside who give you optimal class size and optimal building size, and they spread the cost of that principal, and the cost of that energy, and the cost of those computers, and the cost of everything else. So our deep and rigorous programming is important. We offer our students, and this is just a small sample, 21 AP classes, Calculus 3, which is above the AP curriculum. AP stands for Advanced Placement. Those are college level classes, okay? That's the syllabi in those classes have been vetted by the College Board, so they are college level classes. 21 AP classes, Calculus 3, the Syracuse University freshman writing class, Anatomy and Physiology, and on and on and on and on. It is a deep and rigorous programming. I met with the superintendent last week, 2 weeks ago now, and we were talking about what they offer, and he's in a good district, and I won't tell you where, I don't want to embarrass anyone. I said, he was talking about the ability to offer kids more things, and they were going to work on that. And I said, well, help me understand, because here's what we offer. And I started going through this list, and he said, I can only dream of offering what you guys already have. And it's easy in this community to become blasé about that because we've done it for so long and we've got it. But we need to think about what happens if that goes away. So, here's what happens. We couldn't sustain them if we don't have a critical mass of kids and a critical mass of money to bring them in. And so you start cutting the number of kids, you start cutting programs. And again, I'll ask you, which program do you want to start with? We're going to start with band, we're going to start with athletics, we're going to start with AP classes, we're going to start with music in the 5th grade, we're going to start with 5th grade. Pick it. I don't want to cut things. Here's why. When you cut programs, resident students start leaving. And so you begin a downward spiral. And you don't have to look far to see this playing out all around us. And when you start cutting things, people who are residents, they're dedicated to the schools and the community, they say, you guys can't offer what I want, I've got to go someplace else to get it. And when they go, their money for that kid goes with them, and we can't sustain what makes us attractive. And frankly, what helps our kids, their whole experience. So, our job, I think my job, is to make the Berkley School District the best it can be. My job, I always say, part of what we try to do in Berkeley is put our thumb on the scale for our kids. So we're going to try to figure out how we advantage our kids better than anyone else does. Well, you need money to do that. You need the programs to do it. And if you start eliminating schools of choice students, good luck trying to get that done. So, another reason we do it, they generate over $7 million per year. So it's helped us stabilize the budget. If you eliminate schools of choice students, you're cutting $7 million from your budget. I had people say, no, you're not. You just do it. It's not $7 million tomorrow because you've just phased it in. Great. Well, let's do a $500,000 cut every year for 14 years. Who's signing up for that? It's interesting to note, our budget's about $50 million. So $7 million is about 14% of that. I'll make another statement here, sort of more general. The governor's budget that he just released says every district's going to get $75 more per kid. All right? Every district's going to get $75. We've all read that. That's what he says. We will get, in Berkeley, we will get $0 more per kid because while he's giving us $75, he's cutting performance-based funding where we got $70. I'm sorry. Yeah, we got $70. He's given us 75, plus he's given us a little bit more on that risk, but he's cutting $100 on the other side, so it nets out to a $0 for us. Over the last 10 years, we get $1 less per child for our foundation allowance than we did 10 years ago. $1 less per child than we got 10 years ago. So, SOC acceptance. So this is a question about, do we accept every student who applies? So they come, they apply, you got to take them. Nope. Last year we accepted 96 students and turned away over 200 students. Any private school would love to have those numbers. This ought to be something we're proud of. People are beating down our doors to get in here. This isn't something to say, oh my God, we got schools of choice. Heck, this is fantastic. SOC and academic achievement. This is the one, SOC kids hurt our academic achievement. Show me the evidence. I don't see a shred of evidence in that. We have the highest rates of achievement we've ever enjoyed. One measure, I'll give you one measure. We've got more students taking AP classes than ever. 63% of our seniors, 56% of our juniors, 48% of our sophomores, almost half of our sophomores are taking at least one college level class. That's unheard of. All right, so that, it doesn't hurt our academic achievement. All right, number of mills currently leveled. So this is a question about, well, you want to levy 3 more mills. Where are we now and where are we relative to everyone else? All right, this chart is a little, might be tough to see, but what's highlighted, so the millages start at the bottom. These are 28 districts in Oakland County. Start at the bottom with Pontiac. They level 9.870 right now. Then Clarenceville, 10.5, and then Berkeley, 10.7. All right, so we're third from the bottom. If we add the 3 mills, the blue line on the left and the kind of line going through says where we'll be. We'll still be in the bottom half of districts in the county. At the top, Southfield levels 26.4868 mills. 26. We'll be just over half of what they levy. The other interesting thing is that most of the schools of choice kids that come to us come to us from districts where they levy more taxes. So they're paying they're paying higher taxes in their district than when they come here. All right. So one more question. So those are the most common questions we get. Here's my question. What's the better alternative plan? Our boilers aren't going to fix themselves. Our air exchange handlers aren't magically going to get better. Our safety and security won't automatically improve. All these things take an investment. And if you looked at some of the pictures Patrick showed and some of the entrances, you know, Pattonville, we've got a real issue of where people walk in the building and where the office is. At Anderson, we've got that same issue. 99 of my big steps from that back door to the main office in Anderson. We've got to address these things. We've got to fix them. So, if not this plan, what's the better idea? And the better idea can't be do nothing. let's just wait. Let's just wait and see what happens, because we know what's going to happen. These systems are going to fail. We closed Angel one day this year because of a boiler issue. We got that fixed, got them back online the next day, but we're going to start seeing that more and more. So, here's some final thoughts. Berkeley's a great district. We've got great kids. We've got great communities. We've got great teachers. We've got great staff members. We've got great custodial maintenance people. This proposal is going to go a long way in bringing our infrastructure up to date. It's not the perfect plan. I've had so many elementary parents say to me, I cannot believe you're not going to give us air conditioning. What kind of an idiot are you? I'm this kind, I guess. We can't afford it now. We've got to have a reasonable plan. This is a reasonable plan. So again, let's not make perfect the enemy of the better. So with that, we kept it right at an hour. We try to keep it to an hour. If you have questions, there are the cards. As you walk out, there's a one-page handout. It's got that tax chart on it. I saw some people trying to take pictures of it. We've got that on it. That is posted or will be posted on our website as well. If you have specific questions, I'm going to ask Mr. Gallagher. He's our Deputy Superintendent of Finance to come over here. So if you've got financial questions, he may be the guy to talk to, or he is the guy to talk to. If you've got questions about technology and curriculum, Mary Beth Fitzpatrick, who's our Assistant Superintendent for that, will stand over there. If you've got architecture and engineering questions, I will ask our Stantec guys to back corner. And McCarthy and Smith, our construction guys, back corner that way. So again, and we'll be around. Thanks for attending. If you have your cards, question cards, and you have questions on them, you can give them to me or any one of us. There is a box in the back. You can drop them in as well. All right. If you have questions, send me an email. I'll try to respond. I'll get back to you. I'll get back to you. All right. Thanks again. Appreciate all your attendance, and let me know if you have questions, and we'll go from there.